All right, on today's episode, we interviewed JD where we talked about, what it looks like to transition and go buy a plumbing HVAC company, right? Some of the mistakes made up front and then going on and acquiring two more, right? And starting to build not a small company, but really build a mid-sized company that is, starting to have clout and going into different regions and strategically buying them. So Casey, what were some of your takeaways?
Man, you're going to hear me say this 100 times in these intros when I meet these guys that are quick starts, right? I mean, JD did not think for a very long time. He didn't stew. He went, bought a business, solved problems, bought another one, solved problems, bought another one, and very quickly, had some great growth in the business, and he learned along the way. And that was a lot of part of my startup acquisition side. Just went and got involved. Now, has it been the best story in the world? No, but you learn so much to get you to the next one. And sometimes action speaks a lot more than spreadsheets and all the other stuff.
Yeah, ultimately, you got to bet on yourself, right? And you make those mistakes on that first one. And like you said, I mean, that first one is not meant to be the home run, right? It's that second, that third one. You start to get smarter. You start to get economies of scales. You start to get more efficient, and you can start to roll with it. So lots to unpack on this one. I mean, I learned a lot, and it's got me more excited about HVAC and plumbing.
All right, guys, just take 1 second here real quick. When you're buying a business, ensuring the financial health of the company is critical. And that's where a quality of earnings partner comes in. Quality of earnings gives you confidence in the financials of the company that you're purchasing. It aims to protect your investment and ensure that you're stepping into a profitable business on day one. Patrick of O'Connell Advisory Group is your dynamic quality of earnings partner. He's here to help you buy the right business on your timeline. Patrick's entire practice is focused on business acquisitions. Your niche is his niche. And over the past decade, Patrick's helped more than 200 buyers like yourself successfully purchase and operate enduring, profitable businesses. In fact, Patrick's helped some listeners of this show. So if you're buying, looking for help with the quality of earnings, financial due diligence, network capital, and more, head to o'connelladvisorygroup.com or just click the link in the show notes.
Hey, JD, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
You bet, man.
Good to have you, JD.
All right, in today's episode, we're going to talk about plumbing, HVAC, and all the above. So, JD, you want to give a little bit of background about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm from Birmingham, Alabama originally. Went to college at the University of Alabama. I was actually there for Nick Saban's first game. Fun fact with that.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Right? Got a degree in electrical engineering that I promptly never used. So right after college, I went in the Army. I was a Corps of Engineers officer for the United States Army for a great 4 years. Didn't want to do 20. Got out of that. That brought me to Colorado originally. When I left the Army, I had a career in commercial elevators, of all things. So I joined a company called Schindler Elevator, went to San Francisco for about 2 years as a project manager, supervisor type. Went to Phoenix, a lot more hands-on field supervision role in Phoenix for a couple years, and then came back to Denver with a different company to like take over a construction department for them. Was looking for the next thing in the corporate world and just wasn't finding it. Had a couple of good things come my way, but it either required moving or taking a weird sidestep or something like that. And I was sitting on a job offer actually to go work for a guy back in California to run a small business of all things. And I was talking to my wife and we're like, hey, we really want to move back to California. We love Colorado. And I decided, the best way to get to stay into Colorado is to invest in Colorado. So we decided to put our time and our money into the state. And I started looking for a business to buy. That was the summer of 21. So peak COVID, pretty much. Started looking around, got in touch with some brokers, had some awkward, just learning how to buy businesses, learning how to make offers, or not even buy business, learning how to make offers and meet owners, right? Chased a couple companies, actually had a deal that I got a signed LOI on, ran through diligence, realized it just didn't make any sense. I had a dead deal, which was super awkward because I told my employer at the time that I was about to buy this company and then it fell through. Managed to be able to stay on with that employer. Found Mountain Valley in the spring of 22, and it was a little smaller than what I wanted to buy, but it just checked a lot of boxes, right? Like they had a great recurring customer base. It was kind of in a remote location, so it literally had like a physical barrier to entry for competition to come in. And it was in an industry that I was pretty interested in, the plumbing and HVAC industry. Oddly enough, I actually went and looked at the business totally on a lark. I was actually chasing a different company and going to a franchise discovery day, and this one came up as an Estes Park, and I'm like, sure, I'll drive the hour and a half from Denver out to Estes Park to look at this thing, and it just made a lot of sense. So did the deal, got our LOI, closed on it in June of 22, and we've been off to the races ever since. Bought a second company, a really small deal, seller finance deal, just a phone number and a website in the spring of 23, plumbing company that got us out of Estes Park. So originally if you're not familiar with Colorado geography, Estes Park is a very small town. There's about 6,000 homes in that service area, but it's about 30 minutes away from like the main front range of Colorado, where all the bigger cities are, like Denver, Boulder, Fort Collins, cities people have heard of. And so that second acquisition got us a customer base, a small one, albeit, but a customer base in northern Colorado. We moved the shop slowly down to the Loveland area, which is kind of near Fort Collins. Then in the fall of 23, believe it or not, I had the opportunity to buy a company called JD's Plumbing. Just made sense, right? You kind of
perfect.
That was a much bigger deal. That was a true $1 million in revenue, about 300 in SDE. Closed on that at the end of September in 23, and we kind of slowly merged them all under one brand name. The JD's brand name is still out there, but the minute somebody calls in, we tell them, oh, hey, it's Mountain Valley now. We move on with the customer relationship from there. So we've been running that roughly. When I got into this, the last full years of financials for Mountain Valley, they were doing a little over $1 million a year in revenue. We just closed out last year about $4.5 million of revenue. So in 2 years, it's grown about 4x, which is painful. And it's painful, and I would not recommend it, but here we are.
Yeah,
we're gonna uncover that. I gotta know about that.
So there's a lot to unpack in this.
You're in a service business. You're 24/7, I imagine.
Yeah, we're not really a 24/7 company. We do close at 7 p.m. and we don't work weekends. We don't have on-call or anything like that. And that's another decision I'd be happy to talk about, but we did get away from that stuff.
All right, so let's unpack. So first of all, you're kind of in the elevator space, which we really like those businesses. We got very close.
Love them too.
We got close on one of those because, I mean, talk about a good moat, right?
Just don't know about unions, and they're unionized, and it's hard to even. I don't even want to get into that.
Yeah, and so, but then you obviously went off, ended up buying this first plumbing company, right? Mountain Valley.
Yep.
And as you mentioned, it was $1 million of revenue. What was the SDE?
The seller, Gary, he had very much so he was ready to retire. And so the last year of SDE was like $75,000. It was not much.
Oh, wow.
I think, the trailing 3 years was like 130.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, like that last year, it was clear he was, ready to go.
Don't worry, we bought a deal from a Gary too. So.
And did you buy that? Did you get a good multiple?
Yeah. What'd you buy that for?
About 2.2.
That's very good.
Then 2.2x.
Yeah. And then it came with real estate. So if you know the ins and outs of the SBA, I was able to finance it as a real estate deal. So I had it on a 25-year term. Yeah. I mean,
the business and the real estate at 25. That's nice.
Yeah. And this was back before interest rates went up. And so, I mean, my debt service was like $3,000 a month. It was nothing.
It's a no-brainer. Nice. I mean, it's always sweet if you can, because, if you can buy it, you're basically doing multiple arbitrage, right? You're buying a business, but at a real estate multiple. So,
and man, honestly, you're going to fuck up your first business. Like, that's just all there is to it. You're going to make some real mistakes, and having that multiple it's just risk tolerance, right? Like, if your multiple is low, your debt service is stretched out, you've got a lot of room to make mistakes, and you're gonna make them. Just be prepared walking into it.
Absolutely. So you bought that first business. Clearly it was kind of, a little tired, right? How many employees was it? And what did that first 6 months look like? And or some of the learnings and mistakes you made then?
Yeah. So it was 7 employees, 6 field technicians, and we had a woman in the office. And I didn't really change much for 6 months. This was a very old school plumbing company. It was paper billing. It was time and material billing. There was no flat rate. We would bid like a furnace, but the pace we worked at was incredibly slow. We did about 1 furnace a week, and that was pushing it. Like it was a furnace or a boiler or a remodel every week. We do like 1 a day now. Or 2 some days. And it's the pace has dramatically grown. It was just in Estes Park, which, as I said, it's a town of about 6,000 houses. Had a very dominant position, I would say, but it was so underpriced. And of course, you're going to have a dominant position if you're that cheap, right? So for the first 6 months, I didn't really do much. We had some personnel challenges. On a different podcast, I talked about my master plumber. Let's just say he self-selected to leave through some actions. And,
And that messes with your license, right?
Yeah, it does, which I saw it coming. I was able to get another guy in pretty quick, but still, yeah, like for the first 6 months, man, you're ready to like you're sweating bullets about that license. It's a bit unnerving. I don't have the master plumbing license.
Yeah.
I do have the mechanical license, so I do all the HVAC stuff, the boiler stuff, but the plumbing license is a whole other animal. And yeah, we had that challenge, but aside from that, really, there weren't too many challenges. We had one really big project, which thank you, Gary. I had this job for it's $120,000 or $140,000, a very large boiler change out. And oddly enough, like it was kind of beautiful because so we required a down payment and then there's like an 8-week lead time. It's a very large commercial boiler. And so we were able to sit on this giant down payment while we waited for the material to come in. So it was a huge boon for my working capital, which in the first 6 months, you really kind of need that kind of stuff. Well, you always need that kind of stuff. In the first 6 months, you really need
king,
that.
Man.
Yeah, man, tell me about it. So the first 6 months, I didn't really do anything, but I mean, it was clear that like some things needed to change. One, there was no scheduling. So I didn't really do like a ride along or anything with Gary before I bought the company. So like day one, I show up and the way they scheduled things was just, I mean, looking back at it, it was awful. So like there was no system. Like the lady at the front would take your phone call. She would write down, make a paper job ticket for you. She had these like 3 7-slot dividers, like one for each week. So going out 3 weeks, and then one slot for each day. And she would just look at the slots and be like, well, I think, Tuesday next week looks kind of empty. Let's put you on Tuesday. And so she'd stick your paper ticket there. And then Tuesday would come around. All the guys would come into the shop. We'd pull out all the tickets for Tuesday. We had these like chip clips on the wall in my office. We'd throw them up there. And then whatever tickets we just didn't feel like doing the day before, we'd get to those. I mean, it was a disaster. There was no scheduling. There was no dispatching. There was none of that kind of stuff. So I kind of knew like, we need to organize this. We need to get it better. And we need to work on our pricing too. So I did raise our labor rates and our material multiples. That's about a 20% increase. And honestly, I'll tell anybody that's buying a brand new business, especially one in condition kind of like this, that there's probably room to raise your prices when you first step in, like within a month or two, almost always. And I mean, unless you're buying like a really sophisticated high multiple business, if you're buying this thing at like 2 or 3x EBITDA, you can probably raise your prices. And so I did raise the prices, and it was like a 15% raise. It wasn't even that much. The only people that complained about it worked for me. Kind of tell you something about how that business was, right? So
you're like, the customers will never take that. And you're like, yeah,
they all did. Yeah. No, nobody minded.
That's not the customer we need. I mean,
well, yeah. And there was no thought like that. Like they wanted every customer, no matter how cheap it was, and there was no thoughts to like maximizing tickets or getting, good multiples on revenue or how much money did you bring in this week? Stuff like that just wasn't really thought of, So I knew we needed some work on scheduling and like internal operations of the business. I knew we needed some work on pricing. We build time material, which has always not set super well with me. Like, I just don't like the idea of it. I think it makes sense in a commercial space, but in a residential space, you're telling a customer, you're going to pay me $140, $150 an hour until I'm done. Like, that's just, that doesn't sit well with me. I wouldn't like that.
Want to know numbers? Tell me how much it's going to cost.
And exactly, the residential stuff is well known, right? It doesn't have the risk that the commercial stuff has, which is like you're going to have one problem that opens up another problem. That, it's easier to give you fixed pricing too.
Well, if you think about it too, so if you are billing somebody time material, your best technicians that work the fastest bring you the least amount of money because they're just burning through. I actually had 2 or 3 like pretty skilled technicians brag about how fast they were running through their tickets. And I'm like, you understand we bill hourly here, right? Like, this is not like you're actually less valuable to me now. It's kind of a screwed up situation. But that's the way it is, I mean, unless you start charging like some kind of flat fee just to show up, which we probably could have done, but we didn't. But anyway, so I knew we needed to do some like dispatching organization, some pricing, tighten up, stuff like that, right? There's a lot of different software suites out there. I started exploring them. Got us on one called Service Titan, which knows anything about the industry. It's pretty dominant. They just went public recently.
Yeah, I've heard of Service Titan. Yeah, I've heard.
Yeah, it's very powerful.
Dispatch, billing, all your stuff, right?
Yep. Yeah, very powerful piece of software. Pretty happy with it. It's expensive, I will say, but there's some real advantage to it. Especially, I could talk about it for a long time.
But you probably bolted on your other acquisitions with it, right? You probably were able to take them. Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. And then I threw in with this this company called the New Flat Rate, which I still strongly recommend. We have since left their program, but I do really think it's great for a company that was in a situation like mine, where there's just no like flat rate price book or anything like that that's available to you. You're building it off from scratch. And so they give you that. Like they give you this price book. They give you some pretty good sales training. It's a good thing to jump into, especially that. But
What is that called?
it's called the New Flat Rate. Strongly encourage people that are out there.
It's not HVAC specific, right? Or is it the kind of thing where they come sit down with your team for a week or a couple of hours and understand the business and then give you a flat rate book of suggested, pricing based on what you guys do, or how does that work?
It is pre-built for plumbing, HVAC, electrical, and I think they do. And granted, this was almost 2 years ago now. So, and they also had like chimney sweeping.
Got it. So they specialize in industries. They know the pricing should be in those industries and markets. Got it.
Yeah. Yeah, they're kind of like, if you ever heard of a company called Nexstar, they're kind of like Nexstar Light is what I like, super light. Like Nexstar's a really big animal. You get into that, I would say it's a cult, but that's one other story. but these guys, it's they give you some training. They'll help you build this price, but they have a template for it. I will say I'm not sponsored, but I don't get any kind of kickback. So I'll give you my honest opinion of them. It is a bit weird, I would say, because like they've got it set up. They use some kind of weird language. You can customize it all and make it way less weird, but it does take some getting used to. I still think it's a great thing. The reason we left it is the technicians just never really understood it, and it was hard to enforce it. And so they were going off menu a lot. We made something that made a lot more sense for the technicians. But I would say if you're coming from zero on this, it's a great program. So we rolled out Service Titan. Lo and behold, every technician quit. Because what you'll learn about trade companies is that there really are like two types of technicians in residential service. There's the guys that want to just get paid hourly. They want it to be as simple. It's all about just fixing the problem as fast as humanly possible. Get in and get out, right? These are kind of like your low service level companies. There's nothing wrong with them. You can make plenty of money doing that stuff. What I was trying to do is transition our company, what I would call a high service company, where we're getting bigger tickets. We're providing a higher level of service. We're getting to customers faster. We have a more complicated process to sell stuff. And then, we sell stuff to you. We're a business. We are here to make as much money as possible. And if the customer doesn't like it, we're okay getting told no by a customer every once in a while, or 30% of the time, whatever it winds up being. So those two technician types don't always play nice together. And so the guys in the first group, they all wound up quitting, going their separate ways. I held on to a couple of guys, and honestly, the guys that are still with me that stuck with us, I got one guy, I think he made $120,000 last year, and he took 3 months off for the birth of a kid, right? Like it's, these guys are making great money now. We've got a performance package that pays them very handsomely. We've made this a career that pays a true living wage in a state like Colorado, where they can afford to buy houses now and have families and wives and stuff like that.
Which is pretty awesome, because you were talking about earlier when we first joined, it was like you were talking about payroll, right? You were talking about, man, you pay weekly, you pay on the spot.
Not even like a week late, like a week of.
Which is again, man, somebody, and I had another conversation earlier this morning with another person, compensation drives behavior, right?
It does.
If you get the compensation right, it drives behavior. So you
show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome.
You got rid of the guys that were not incentivized to make more money. They just wanted that consistency. And you said, hey guys, I'm now going to force you to be a sales agent. When you go in there, you're going to learn on upsells. You're going to learn how to talk to them. You're going to, all of those things that then it sounded like you grew your revenue from $1 million to $4 million. Is that?
Yeah. Yeah. So I bought basically 2.2 million of revenue, if you'd say.
It's your point. Right. Yeah. 2.2 bought, and then that grew to 4. So, but I mean,
2.2.
Hey, growing through acquisitions is also a fair growth strategy. So that's,
4.6, Hoss. That's where we're at.
Okay. That's good. So 2 questions. How did you find that first business? We didn't actually talk about that. And then I want to transition to the larger acquisition that you did.
Brokers. So I went through every business I've bought has been through Transworld, Colorado.
Okay. Transworld's good group.
Yeah. So, again, I'm not sponsored by anybody. 85-90% of business brokers are probably straight up crooks, but the 10% you find that are really good are worth their weight in gold. And so I managed to find the 10% that I like, and good Lord, they've honestly been assets. Like, I mean, there's still business broker games they play, don't get me wrong, but you start to see through it, and like you find guys and they bring you good deals. So The first one I did, Chris Cantwell is actually the owner. I think he's the owner still. I don't quite know how Transworld works. It's like local franchises, right?
Yeah.
So Chris owns the one here in Colorado, and then he owns one in Vegas as well. I think he's moved out to Vegas since then. But Chris Cantwell is the one that found Mountain Valley. And then I've also got another one, Ross Hames, who I would recommend to anybody. He's actually sold a business for a friend of mine as well. Ross was like the buy side broker, which I don't quite understand where the line is here. They all work for Transworld and get paid by the seller, but sure, one of these guys is a buy side guy. And yeah, I mean, I'd say this, like every time you call Ross and ask him a question, I feel like I made $20,000. So I don't know. I mean, you can say some bad things about brokers, but these guys, I've done 3 deals with them. I'm very happy with all 3.
No, I mean, they add value. They're there for a reason. So
yeah,
then they brought you that larger one. So talk through kind of what did you do in terms of due diligence? How did you put the deal together? What was the debt? What was the equity and the multiples?
Well, yes. I mean, I'd be remiss here if I didn't say one thing I've been harping on recently. One thing I wish I had done in the first 6 months of owning this business is like tightened up my financial reporting a lot better than I did. So now I do my own books. Like I have an accountant that like helps me out, like actually does the taxes and everything. But like internally, we do our own bookkeeping. We do our own payroll and stuff. Well, I've got a payroll provider, but like we do our own bookkeeping. So I spent a lot of time in QuickBooks Online. I did not know how to do that when I bought a company. And I wish I had done it from day friggin' zero. Because I mean, like we're all business owners here. You can hire a manager, you can hire technicians, you cannot hire a business owner.
Accounting is a critical function that always gets overlooked, and then you have to do the cleanup, and life is not good in the cleanup. Ask me how I know. It took us only 2 years to get the whole organization cleaned up across multiple companies. It's a pain, but it's critical.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened to me. So I wish I had done that. And then like if you're going to throw in a CRM on top of that, like Service Titan, it has to integrate with whatever financial tools you're using. And if it doesn't, you're even more screwed, right? Even further behind. And so I found this deal with JD's Plumbing, and I think they had another buyer working or something like that. So it was not off market, but I couldn't write an LOI on it. That's one thing Transworld's good about. Like if you get an LOI, it's exclusive once you have it agreed to, right? I guess not all brokers do that, which is ridiculous, but they were working through another deal. I guess it fell out, and they came to me first, and I said, sure, I'll write an LOI. I wrote an LOI. My original financing was with Live Oak. It still all is with Live Oak. And I called them. I said, hey, would you guys finance this? And they said yes in like less than 2 hours. I basically said, are you sure you want to do this? Like they didn't even think about it. They just said, yeah, we'll do it, which is a great thing about Live Oak. Like they'll finance your deal.
Live Oak sponsors our conference. They're awesome. We love Live Oak.
They're awesome, man. Yeah. So the problem I had and what held the deal up for 3 months is my financials were an absolute mess. And so I had to bring in another accounting agency. They had to clean the books up. It cost like $6,000. It was awful. Got through it though. I had financials. It all made sense. Did the deal, right? So honestly, man, like that third deal was a tenth of the work of the first deal. Because and this is what I'd say to anybody that's aspiring to do this. Your first deal is the hardest one by far. And honestly, what I would say is if you can get in and get a small company and get it, maybe it's not big enough for you, but you can do more deals beyond that. And the second deal, the third deal, the 10th deal, whatever it winds up being, they're so much easier and so much more profitable and so much better that honestly, just get the first one done. Make sure you don't go bankrupt and then start doing more. That seems to be kind of the path here.
It's great advice, man.
So you learn from the first one, make the mistakes, and you got to make sure you don't make a mistake that kills you, and then that opens up the door to the next one.
JD, it sounds like so you don't have like a formal team helping you do due diligence and look at all this stuff.
No.
And that's not your background. You're not. This is like your financial background, accountant, or any of these things. So what is kind of your like 3 bullet points when you're due diligencing these service companies? What are those key things you're looking at? Yeah. I know we all say EBITDA, but truly, you should be looking at cash flow, net income, things like that. So how are you looking at it, especially in the service-based side?
So I still have the spreadsheet models I made for my first deal. I pull them up sometimes for a good laugh. Yeah, they're not worth the 10 megabytes of data storage I pay on Google. They were so far off. I think what I've looked for in my last couple of deals is revenue. Revenue really tells the story. And if they're lying about revenue, what else are they lying about? Especially if you're buying within your industry, you know what your expenses are going to be. You know what your gross margin is going to be. So revenue is what you're really looking at. So the way that I validate it is I look at their bank statement. So if the amount of money they put in that month roughly matches their revenue, and do it like over a 12-month time frame, right? So if like their 12 months or their last 18 months of deposits match their revenue, well, then even if they have a set of accrual books, it should be pretty darn close, you know? And if they're right about that, then I'd say that's a great smell check. The next thing I like to look at is their tax returns. If their tax returns all match, then you know they're at least not lying to the government. If they're not lying to the government, they're probably above board. And then beyond that, like I do like to look at like their Google ratings. One thing I really like to buy is Google ratings. If they've got like a 4.9, JD's had a 4.7, but it's in Denver, which is a much more challenging market to work in. The second company I bought had a 4.9. That's a great thing. Those are the things that we're really buying.
Funny that 4.7 is the low bar in your mind. I think 4.7 is still great.
I'd say 4.7 is the floor in my opinion. Yeah.
Sorry, Casey. I really Casey, like 4 right now. Tell Casey you're 4.
It's okay. Hey, I can tell you how to get it up. It's fine.
Room for improvement.
Once you kind of establish that like they're not really lying, then like you know what their expenses are at that point. You can be pretty confident. I think if you're buying, so like both these businesses I bought, they're around $1 million in revenue. That's not big enough to justify a true quality of earnings. I had heard there was a company doing like a very abbreviated quality of earnings now for like $7,000. That might be worth it for a first-time buyer. I think I'd encourage you to do that. I would do what I just told you, like do what I would call kind of a smell check, make sure everything is passing the smell check, and then pass it off to a Q of E guy and pay the $7,000. One thing I did do, so I had a deal that fell through before I bought Mountain Valley, and I did a buyer. Basically, I had another business broker give me his opinion of the value of the company. So truly independent third party that I was paying. I guess it wouldn't be independent, but I'm paying this third party, right? And he put together this like 100-page report, very detailed, about his opinion on the value of the business, which is effectively is what they do whenever they intake a new customer to sell. This guy's name is Jim Deshay. He's actually with Transworld in Denver right now. Dude, honestly, so I've got an MBA that I earned, and the $3,000 I spent with Jim to get this done was probably worth more than my MBA. I learned so much, and going through the dead deal and everything, that was quite the education. Everybody should do a dead deal once. It's great.
So JD, a lot of the people that are probably listening have, you've knocked down in your acquisition world in the last 2 years. You've knocked down three acquisitions. Is that about right?
Yeah.
That's an impressive rate, even if they're small. It doesn't matter. It's an impressive rate. So, I mean, what's your advice to some of the people that are sitting back and they're waiting for that perfect deal, or they're having struggles to engage? What's your advice? Because obviously you're going at it.
Do a self-funded search and do it while you work full time. I did that because it takes a lot of the pressure off. Like if you're sitting on 2 years of living expenses and you're trying to buy a business and not work, I wouldn't do that. That's just too much pressure. I was able to do my day job and come home and maybe skip out at lunch and go look at a company or something like that. You can do it too. The other thing I would say is you will never find a perfect business. Every business has some hair.
I would agree.
Yeah. And in fact, the way that I found success in buying businesses, so for the first 3 to 6 months, every LOI got rejected. And honestly, I think what was going on, I don't know, but I think that what was going on is I was quick to write an LOI. I'd say, yep, I love this deal. Here it is. I think they took my LOI and shopped it. And they found buyers they liked better, which, dude, they're going to do that. You're probably the worst buyer out there because it's your first one. You have no track record. They can't even prove you're going to close. How are they going to tie this 70-year-old seller up for a month or 2 or 3, and then you get to the finish line and back out, right?
Yep.
These guys, they want their trusted buyers to buy from their clients, right? So realize you are the low man on the totem pole. You are going to get screwed. You're going to get cheated. You're going to get treated awfully. Just keep writing LOIs. So the way I found success was I committed to writing 1 LOI a week. I figured every business had a value, whether that value was what they were asking, whether it was above, which it never was, or whether it was below. And most of the time it was below, right? So I'd go look at a deal, or I'd find something like there was a commercial landscaping maintenance company that I thought was kind of cool. They did snow shoveling and stuff. And I wrote an offer, and it was below asking price, but this is what I thought it was worth, right? So I'd write an offer about once a week, and by the time I was done with it, I actually had a franchise that wanted me to sign with them, which I guess all franchises do. And I had two businesses to pick from. There was an electrical contractor that, like, we had a handshake deal, but he wouldn't sign my LOI for whatever reason. And so I kept looking, and then I found Mountain Valley. And so by the end, I got to say, like there were three people that wanted to go to the dance with me, and I picked the one that I liked the best. So put paper on the street, man. You'll find something.
Action, right? Setting goals, getting into action, and that is the hardest thing to do, honestly, man. It sounds easy, but to be disciplined and to do that, and then to execute. Once they do sign it, now you got to go do the work, right?
Yeah. And then I look back on that first deal. Like, I was going through some of the old emails looking for some documents recently, and like, it was a painful deal, man. I mean, it was painful. It was painful. I'll just leave it at that. I can't believe how rough that first one was, but how rough the first one was, the third one was that smooth. Like, it was cool. It was the easiest thing I think it's the easiest $1.1 million I've ever spent, right?
Yeah, no, actually, that's the question. So the third one, you how much? What was the SDE? And it sounds like you bought it for 1.1 million, right?
Yep. I bought it for a 1.1. I do think it was. So it was definitely not my best deal. It was a bit overpriced, but the reason I was willing to pay a bit of a premium.
Strategic buy is okay to pay up a little bit. So,
So the real problem with Mountain Valley was geography, right? So we had all of our customers were pretty much within one zip code, which is good in some ways, but it's really bad in others. And it's a very unique zip code. And so Mountain Valley was not going to be a long-term, super profitable, valuable business if it was only in Estes Park. And so most of my effort ever since then has been to expand us. We want to keep that core market, but also expand out of it as well, just to create a better, bigger company. And so the JD's acquisition was something that I kind of needed. So I paid a little over 3x. I think it was like 3.2 is what I paid on SDE.
Still a good multiple.
So what I would say also too, if you're doing a business in your own, like if you own a plumbing company, you're buying a plumbing company, you can basically acquire these companies and not expand your overhead, right? So if I had been smarter about it, I would have done it faster, but we don't have that office anymore. We all run out of one location. I've got one set of dispatchers, one set of customer service reps, one set of technicians now, so you could basically do all that extra revenue and increase your overhead pretty minimally.
Yeah, no, that's the beautiful thing of scale. So it's called economies of scale. And was there real estate in that JD one, or kind of? No. So how did you just did a straight traditional acquisition with Live Oak? So.
Yep. Standard SBA 7A deal.
Got it. So you probably put $300,000-$400,000 to close to buy that deal, and then the rest kind of financed.
Nope. I put it. So I have a down payment. No, I had standard 10% in the first deal, and then they've done the second deal. I put $15,000 in. There was a $90,000 small deal. The third one, it was nothing down. They were willing to do it for nothing down.
Oh, awesome.
So awesome. Again, kudos to Live Oak. They will do deals.
Awesome. Perfect.
That is a great way to segment into our questions.
Yeah, I got some comments for you after.
Congratulations to all your success, man. I mean, that's pretty exciting. And
hey, we're not there yet, but we're on our way.
Hey, again, we got to celebrate every day, right? I mean, that's all we get.
Yeah, absolutely.
Indeed.
Not this payroll. You got it done in an hour. Cool. So we're going to jump into our rocket round, and this is when we interview our guests, ask 3 critical questions. JD, what do you like to do in your free time?
Pretty much anything physical. So I've been doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for a while, although I just had an ACL tear, so I'm kind of out of commission, but anything physical, right? So Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, skiing, running, weightlifting, that kind of stuff, playing with my kids, and my wife, that kind of stuff, and my new dog. I got a new dog recently.
Oh, fantastic.
Awesome. And what's been your most memorable moment in your business journey?
Man, leadership changes, I would say. So, or like key employee changes. So, I briefly mentioned like the original master plumber. These are very, honestly, man, I'm a bit of a softie. I don't like firing people. I don't like that. I like to think of us all as one big happy family. Truth is, we're all really players on a Major League Baseball team here, right? And so it's a bit of a struggle sometimes to convince myself to make these difficult leadership changes or key employee changes. But They've all worked out amazing. I've got a guy that's HVAC / general manager now that is, I mean, like he has brought the company from, frankly, a lot of the success is due to him. I've got a new plumbing manager. It's about 6 months in now that honestly, I was at the point of shutting down the plumbing side of the business. It was so bad. I brought this guy in and it's just rocket ship. It's been great. So while these decisions are very difficult, I'm really proud of myself for, you're the only one that can do this. You got to do it. And it's worked out every time.
No, I mean, that's the same thing. I'm probably a little too nice. And it's the Band-Aid you don't want to rip off, but every time you do, you're like, man, that felt so good afterwards.
Yep.
And it's a phrase that I heard and I try to live by it more now, which is like the second you think someone is not a fit, you're going to let them go eventually. So it's just kind of better to do it sooner than later. Right. And then it helps you get to that next hill. Right. And kind of really,
it does.
So people either on the train or not.
All right, JD, what is your favorite tool or resource?
Twitter. My goodness. It is such an amazing networking thing. Like I never would have thought this, but Twitter, X, now whatever you want to call it, my goodness, it is you will meet some really great people. There's a couple guys on there that I follow and talk with a little bit that are running $100 million plus like home service companies, and they'll share like financial goals, like what chunk, like what your gross margin should be, what your overhead percentage should be. And, dude, like the insight you can get from these guys in a couple of tweets, it's phenomenal.
Well, I enjoy Twitter as well. I still have Twitter. Yep. It's still, I have not upgraded to the X.
Awesome. Well, JD, wealth of knowledge. So how can people get a hold of you?
Yep. So I am on X / Twitter as @DirtyHandsOps, which the name sounded really cool when I got it. Now I feel like it sounds kind of dirty. You're welcome to email me. I can put my email here in the show notes, but it's jd@mountainvalleyplumbing.com, but we abbreviate Mountain, so it's mtnvalleyplumbing.com. Or find me on X, shoot me a DM. I'll get back to you.
Perfect.
JD, a wealth of knowledge, man. And I love how you go at it. And thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you guys. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the M&A Launchpad Podcast. If you've enjoyed today's podcast and would like to support us, please leave us a rating and a review after you listen. I'm Casey Minshew, and I look forward to talking with you next week.